Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Fischer Martin, the Executive Director of the Women in Politics Institute at American University. And welcome to another edition of our Women on Wednesdays summer series. We're happy that you're here with us this evening. To those of you new to our events, the Women in Politics Institute is a nonprofit and nonpartisan institute in AU's School of Public Affairs. And we aim to close the gender gap in political leadership. We offer academic and practical training, and we facilitate research and discussions like this on the importance of women being represented in politics on both sides of the aisle. And we are happy you have joined us this evening to listen to our discussion and participate in our discussion, I hope, about Democratic women House candidates in 2020. We have 117 days until the election. And if you missed our discussion a few weeks ago on Republican women in 2020, please check that out on our website or on our Crowdcast page. You can watch the replay there. But we are delighted to have with us this evening Congresswoman Cheri Bustos of Illinois. She is currently the chairwoman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, otherwise known as the DCCC. She has served 4 terms in the House, and in her previous life, she spent nearly 2 decades working as a journalist. In 2018, she won re-election by 24 points, the largest victory for any Democrat from a district that Trump won in 2016. So she knows a thing or two about winning campaigns. So we're delighted that she is with us. And we also have her partner in all things campaign related, Lucinda Guinn, who is the executive director of the DCCC since September of 2019. She is the first Latina to hold that position. Previously, she was the vice president of campaigns at Emily's List, and she worked at the DCCC both in 2008 and 2012. So she's now come full circle. So welcome to you both. We're going to talk with them this evening about their efforts to expand their House majority and build on the success that we all saw in 2018's Year of the Woman. They're going to give us a debrief of sorts on the landscape, how it looks now, and then I want to go through with them some of the Democratic women to watch in some of the districts they are targeting, calling it their red to blue districts. So we'll talk about some of those women as well. And please do, in the bottom of your screen, you'll see an Ask the Question button. So please feel free to submit a question there. I'm going to save plenty of time for questions. It's always my favorite part of the evening. So we hope that you will fill that out and ask a question. And again, if you want to watch any part of this event, again, the replay will be on this Crowdcast website, or you can find a link on our website, the Women in Politics Institute as well. So with that, welcome, Congresswoman and Lucinda. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you for having us.
Sure. So, Congresswoman, I mentioned the Red to Blue program. Can you give us a sense of what that is and why it's important to something like the DCCC to have?
Sure. Well, this goes back many, many, many cycles. And so the name of it kind of describes what it is. It means all of the attempts that we will make honorably and ethically to flip a seat from red, from Republican, to blue, to Democrat. And I have, you had mentioned the kind of district that I come from. Way back in 2012, when I was first running, I was one of those red to blue candidates. This cycle, we have right now 24 candidates from throughout the country, every corner of the country, that we have on our red to blue list. That is not a static number. That number will grow. We've got another set of primaries coming up later in July. We have more primaries in August. So this is an ever-evolving list, and very, very proud of this because of the 24, Betsy, 20 are women, and so it's another diverse group of people that we think we've got a great shot of flipping many of these seats from red to blue.
And Lucinda, tell us why you think these women especially are poised to flip some of these seats. Why are there so many women on that list?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think 2018 was a really important year for women in politics. And I had the privilege of working with Chairwoman Bustos and the whole DCCC team in my role at Emily's List. Where, you know, we elected enough women in 2018 to flip Congress into Democratic control. We helped send the first 2 Latinas from Texas, ever elected from Texas, to Congress, the first 2 Native American women to Congress, the first 2 Muslim American women in Congress. And I think that, the women's reaction to Donald Trump's election has been so strong. We marched in the Women's March. We ran, we voted, we took over city council meetings, and that march has not stopped. And, there's so much math and science that goes into all of the work that we do in elections, but the candidates matter. And the women that we are working with, and all of the candidates we are working with who are stepping up to do this thing and run for office, which is so hard and so brave to do, are truly remarkable. We have farmers, we have teachers, we have veterans, we have lawyers, we have Supreme Court justices from all over the country. And their stories and authenticity help them connect with voters. And I'm very excited to share some of their stories with you all today.
So I wanted to ask you, Congresswoman, currently there are 85 Democratic women incumbents running. So I know we're going to spend some time talking about some of the challengers out there, but can you give us a sense of the landscape of the women that are already there serving? How does it look in terms of their reelection prospects?
Well, so we have another group that we have at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee are called frontliners. So why we call them frontliners? They are in the toughest districts in the nation, and they are currently serving in Congress. We have 42 of those this election cycle, 40 of whom are freshmen, meaning they're brand new, they're serving in their first term. And why we think they're going to do well is because, to Lucinda's point earlier, just like our red to blue candidates, these frontliners, they fit their districts like a glove. And they come from all different backgrounds. When many of the women got some publicity when we were first starting this last session of Congress, because they had a service background. They served in the CIA, they served in the military, in the Navy, in the Army. They stuck together, just like you would if you were in the military. They stuck together. But just amazing stories, amazing women. And probably worth noting is, we not that we like to talk about money. It's not something that we love to talk about, but you've got to have resources to be able to tell people who you are. And these frontline women are just doing amazingly well at getting grassroots support from all over the country. These low dollar donations that are coming in, maybe $5 at a time, $10 at a time, because they have this deep belief in these women and want to make sure that they return to Congress. But Betsy, these stories are just amazing of the kind of women that we have serving in Congress right now.
And after 2018, and we saw the Year of the Woman, there was a lot of somewhat hand-wringing of, hey, are we going to be able to maintain this or expand upon it, or was this just a one-off? As you all said about early on last cycle, doing some of those recruitment efforts and had so many conversations with women, what did you learn from that process? And how did you, if you could just categorize it, I know it's a little difficult to be so broad about it, but what really drew some of these women that are running now to actually run in this age? I know after 2016, a lot of the discussion was 2018 was Trump. Is that still the case? Or are there other issues that are really propelling some of these women to run?
Well, Lucinda, if I can start that off, and this is actually, and please join in, but and Betsy, when we go through some of these profiles of women, let me start with Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan, who is running right now. And I'm going to start with her because she's from my hometown of Springfield, Illinois, which is not in my congressional district. And I've known Betsy since we were both little girls. My mom taught her sister in preschool. But Betsy, this is what motivated her to run. And this story can be repeated.
I'm going to pull up her picture right now. There we go.
There we go. And this story can be repeated for other people who've made decisions to run. Healthcare is the number one issue in these districts all over the country. This is what people care about, they worry about. And in Betsy's case, she had a young son who was on his deathbed and was given last rites not once, but twice. And her family would have gone bankrupt had they not had good health insurance. So this is happening, and she's watching the television and sees her opponent, Rodney Davis, after he took a vote on the House floor to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And he's on the White House lawn, along with all of the other Republicans who proudly cast this vote to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. standing alongside President Trump and celebrating like a frat boy. And Betsy sees this, and it just like hits her in her heart and thinks, this is not okay. And I'm going to run against this guy. And so she makes a decision then and there that she's going to run against Rodney Davis. So this is her second time running. She barely lost by the equivalent of 2 votes per precinct. Mm-hmm. And so she made a decision that she's going to try it again. And I have the deepest faith that Betsy Dirksen Lonergan is going to win. She is working incredibly hard. And it's amazing to see a candidate who's running for a second time and just how much they grow. And I'll tell you what, she's wonderful. She's running for the right reasons. She cares about people deeply. And we have a lot of faith in her, and that is right why we put her on the red to blue list. But that healthcare story could be repeated in different ways by the various candidates. But that would be one example.
So Lucinda, the Congresswoman mentioned sort of the rematches and running again. Why is that so important, especially for women, to kind of get back up on the proverbial horse and try and run again?
Yeah, absolutely. We have several rematches that we're excited to share with you all today and talk about a little bit today. Betsy Dirksen Lonergan is a great example. Gina Ortiz Jones, who won by just less than 1,000 votes. Carolyn Bourdeau lost by 432 votes. Lost by 432 votes, and she's running again. So we have these amazing women stepping up to the plate to do this thing again that is very challenging, where you have to ask people for help over and over and over again. And they are remarkable. They have learned a lot. And I think it shows a lot that you can learn, you can grow. The investments they made in themselves, in their profiles, in their brands, in their district are continuing to roll straight into this election cycle. They have made real investments in connecting with their communities, and that doesn't go away. They start at a different place. They start with a different base of support, not only in polling and in fundraising, but in volunteerism and in grassroots support. So it's important, I think, that we see women who got so close and did such an amazing job in 2018 continue to step up and try. We're going to see so many of these women come to Congress as a result of their tenacity and in pushing through. And we're doing this for sometimes 3 or 4 years in a row.
Let me go through a couple other candidates. You mentioned Gina Ortiz Jones in Texas. Tell us a little bit more about her. She's actually in the Cook report, which we all look at for kind of the rankings and where people are going in a district that's lean Dem. So she's in a pretty good position, competitively speaking, in that district. Tell us a little bit more about her.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and then Chairwoman, feel free. So for folks who have spent any time with me, you know that I'm obsessed with this race and this district. Gina Ortiz Jones is an incredible candidate. She's a veteran. She also has a very powerful healthcare story about caring for her aging mother who lives in San Antonio. So this is a really sprawling district. It goes from El Paso, Texas, all the way to San Antonio, and that's about an 11-hour drive. So it is geographically very large. 2 suburban pockets, and we can talk about the revolt of the suburbs, if you will, and how much the Republicans are really losing a grasp on the suburbs. And then there is this giant swath of rural areas in between El Paso and San Antonio. In the gerrymandering and partisan redistricting that has taken place in Texas for about a generation, this has been traditionally the only competitive seat in the state of Texas that has toggled back and forth between Democratic and Republican control. Gina Ortiz Jones stepped up to the plate, did an incredible job last cycle, came within less than 1,000 votes of winning. Will Hurd, who was touted as a Republican superstar, saw the writing on the wall and decided he wasn't going to run for office this year. So she's now running in an open seat, which creates an easier dynamic for us. We don't know who she's going to run against yet. We have that. The Republicans are in a runoff, which will take place this Tuesday.
Right.
And so she's had a lot more advantages this cycle in terms of where she's building from and also, who we're running against. But the climate is also just very ripe for someone with Gina's deep profile. She's an Air Force intelligence officer, a veteran, very deep ties in the San Antonio portion of this district. And we're just ecstatic that, she's coming to Congress next year, we think.
Let me move on to some of the races that are more toss-up rated, and some of the women that you have running there. Christie Smith in California. She's a state assemblywoman, and she's another one that is in a rematch. In fact, she's in a very, she actually ran for the seat in May for the special election, and she's having to run again now.
Yeah, so I'll kick in on one. So yeah, she just had to participate in a special election, which it was the only election on the entire ballot. So I think it's worth noting this is the seat that Katie Hill had served in, and it ended up being she resigned, and it's an open seat. And so Christie, who serves in the legislature, she did very well in the primary. She was the top vote getter in the Democratic primary. So she has the special election in March. Was not successful there, but it's worth noting, and it's kind of like, unless you study this stuff inside and out, it's a little bit hard to understand. But that was the only election on a special election ballot when it was almost entirely all vote by mail. So we were learning as we were going along.
Right.
A guy named Mike Garcia won. And so now Christie will face Mike in the general election. Now, why are we so confident that we can do well? Well, in a general election, when you've got the presidential at the top of the ticket, and you've got all of the other races going on, and this happens to be in California, well, all of a sudden the dynamics, the voters who turn out change. And we think Christie is the right candidate. We think that after Mike Garcia has a voting record, which will be intertwined like this with Donald Trump, where he will do what he can to harm healthcare. And we think Christie Smith will be successful. And she's revamping her campaign, and it's going to be a hard fought battle. And we're confident that she'll be successful going into November.
Yeah. If I could just chime in with one other piece about the Christie Smith special election and how much we've learned. It was also the first election that we participated in the middle of COVID.
Right.
So we set up an entire field apparatus in this campaign, an entire campaign infrastructure to run a more traditional in-person campaign. She is completely revamped. We expect this electorate to be a ton better in May, and we have learned a ton about the best way to campaign inside of this environment too.
Let me move to Georgia, another toss-up race. Carolyn Bourdeau there. She was actually a staffer for Senator Ron Wyden on the Hill, and is now a professor at Georgia State University. Tell us a little bit more about that race.
Go ahead, Lucinda.
Yeah, absolutely. So Carolyn Bourdeau came within 432 votes of winning against an incumbent Republican in 2018. He also, much like Will Hurd, saw the writing on the wall. He decided he was going to retire because Carolyn Bourdeau was coming for him again. So she will now face off with a Republican named Rich McCormick. As you mentioned, she's a professor. While she was in college, she was trying to put herself through college, and her parents had to file for bankruptcy. And so she also has this kind of story that is, when she tells it, resonates with folks all over the district. This is suburban Atlanta. It is a place that is trending more and more Democratic. Obviously, we need to make sure votes are counted in suburban Atlanta and all over the state of Georgia, as that continues to be a challenge with that Republican Secretary of State there. But, she worked across the aisle to steer Georgia through its last economic crisis in her role as a professor and kind of a guidance to a lot of the state legislators in the state. And her leadership is so needed right now in Congress and in the state of Georgia. So we're thrilled that she's running again and mounting a really strong bid.
Great.
Hey, Betsy.
Yeah.
I want to throw in one other dynamic here, because we just talked about these Republicans that were running away. And if we want to talk about Christina Hale, who's also running in an open seat in Indiana, I love following Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report.
Yes.
He tweets these things that, he puts all this together, and I always learn from them. But he had this recent tweet that was one of my favorites. And he pointed out that when President Trump took office in January of 2017, there were 241 Republicans in the House. All right. I know there's a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
But since then, 48% have either retired announced the retirement, resigned, or have already been defeated. So nearly half of those people who were in office when he was sworn in. And so you're seeing kind of the trend with what Lucinda just talked about, with the Will Hurd seat, with now in the Carolyn Bourdeau race. And if we want to talk a little bit about Christina Hale.
Yeah, we bring her in there.
Okay, and yeah. I know that you had Susan Brooks on your show.
Yes.
Well, this was the Susan Brooks
right.
seat. And I like Susan Brooks, but I'm glad that it is an open seat. And this is Christina Hale. You see her image there. But this is another continuing of the trend of notable first women in Congress. So she is the second Latina ever elected to serve in the Indiana state legislature. And as a Cuban American candidate, she would be the first Latina to represent the Hoosier state in Congress. So, and this is one of those, I would love it if Christina was on this show right now, because we would be laughing. I mean, she's like a stand-up act. She's funny. She's real. She loves animals. She is smart, whip smart, incredibly hard worker. And we think like this is a seat that back in the day, we wouldn't have thought we had a shot at, but it's an open seat and Christina's polling looks great. And we think we can pick this one up.
Well, you just gave me a good idea. I think it would be fun maybe in October to get some of these candidates on just to talk to folks and hear about their experiences thus far. So we'll be looking to you to help us get those people on.
We will absolutely.
We're happy to help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's running, and there's a couple matchups like this against another woman in the general election.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, but we would be happy to do that. Like I kind of feel like some of these candidates, I like to say to know them is to love them.
Yeah.
I say that repeatedly about Jackie Gordon. Also running in another open seat, Peter King's seat out of New York. And like you could get in a conversation with her, and I bet 3 minutes into it, you're going to go, oh my gosh, like I have to vote for this woman. She's phenomenal. But we'd love to tell you a little bit about Jackie too, if you're open to that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Do all the talking. I'll let you take this one.
Awesome. To know Jackie Gordon is to love Jackie Gordon. She is amazing. She is a combat veteran. She served in the military for 29 years. She also served as a school guidance counselor. Very deep roots in this Long Island district. As Democrats, we have gone after this seat. This was Peter King's seat for a long time, sticking on our trend of retiring Republicans here. And we have come very close. This is a district that should be in Democratic control. He also saw the writing on the wall after last cycle. And so now this is a new open seat. We just got an opponent named a couple days ago because voting is taking a little bit longer, or counting the votes rather, is taking a little longer these days as more mail-in ballots are coming in. But, this is a seat that has very good DNA for Democrats to win. This is a candidate who is stellar and has a really incredible ability to connect with voters and constituents in her area. So we're stoked about Jackie Gordon.
Let me ask you, while we're talking about New York, there's another candidate from New York that's running in the New York 24. Let me see if I can. Yeah, here she is. Dana Balter. Tell us about her. She's also a professor at Syracuse University, and another rematch.
Yeah, so it's an increasingly competitive rematch. As you pointed out, John Katko is the incumbent, and Dana leads in the most recent poll 48 to 45. And the Cook Political Report, which we just referred to a little bit ago, just shifted the race toward Democrats. So, this is just one of two remaining Clinton districts held by a Republican running for re-election in the entire country. So a little bit about Dana. Immigrant daughter of Holocaust refugees. Her work with Americans with disabilities was inspired by her brother, who has cognitive disabilities himself. She's got a background as a special education teacher. She was a director of disability services and a nonprofit service. And, again, like you hear these stories, Betsy, and you just, these are just real people who would bring their real life experiences and from all these different areas to Congress. And we're very, very excited about Dana's win in the primary. And we think she's ready to take on Katko, and the polling already shows her with a 3-point advantage.
Great. Let me move to Ohio. Another former Senate staffer, Kate Schroeder, who's running against an incumbent there. Tell us a little bit about her.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate has a very personal healthcare story as well. Kate is a cancer survivor, and her personal story with healthcare really does help her make her case to flip this district. She is a 5th-generation Cincinnatian. We have done our due diligence and beaten up Steve Shabbat over the years. I think it is ripe for the picking. The last race ratings that we saw here said that Kate possesses a serious threat to her opponent, so we'll take that. But she's mounting an incredibly strong campaign, and just came out of a primary to make sure she had the nomination for the seat as well. And we're really excited to work with her.
And then here's someone who doesn't need much of an introduction in the women in politics field, because so many people remember her hard-fought race for governor of Texas, Wendy Davis. And she's now running against a freshman in the 21st district, Congressman Chip Roy. How does that campaign look?
It looks really good. Yeah. Wendy is raising unbelievable amounts of money, as you can imagine. And as you said, I mean, she's a hero to women all over the country. And just as a very quick reminder, it was Wendy, if you remember, standing on the floor of the Texas legislature in her historic 13-hour filibuster. Right. And so, that put her name on the map. And she's built her brand working across the aisle, because when you look at these districts, these are tough districts. And your politics can't be, too far out this way or that way to be successful in some of these really tough districts. So she literally, why you think of her on that filibuster, she is known for working across the aisle as a state senator. And so she's running against Chip Roy, who has literally built his reputation as this unoriginal loyalist to Donald Trump. So Wendy and Gina are a great big part of why Texas has been ground zero since day one in this election cycle.
Speaking of Trump loyalists, I want to ask you about Amy Kennedy, who just won her primary yesterday. Of course, everyone will recognize the Kennedy name, and she's married to former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who was a member of Congress from Rhode Island for many years. Mm-hmm. And she is facing party switcher, Congressman Van Drew. And I noticed a tweet that you guys sent out that said, Jefferson Van Drew is a turncoat, a con artist, a political opportunist who cannot be trusted well by anyone. How do you really feel?
Well, you know what? I mean, geez, he literally the week that he leaves the Democratic caucus to become a Republican, he's raising money. He's asking other Democrats to contribute to his reelection efforts. And then all of a sudden he's on Fox News holding Donald Trump's hand and blowing kisses at him. I mean, it's like, what else do you say? So we feel really good about Amy Kennedy winning the primary just last night. So this is hot off the presses.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I actually called her late last night. We've been playing phone tag today. I also called her husband late last night, also playing phone tag. But look, Amy has what it takes to win this. She is, and we are very committed. We are very committed to wanting to beat Jeff Van Drew in this election cycle.
That's right. And also hot off the presses on this front, we just released a poll that shows her in striking distance of Jeff Van Drew. This is a Republican leading seat, but we are going to take him out, and there's a little bit of an axe to grind here. Sure.
Okay, let's move to Arizona. And Hiral Tiperneni in the 6th district there. She actually ran unsuccessfully twice in the 8th district and is now running in this district. She still has a primary to go through, but you all have her on your red to blue list.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Lucinda. You can take this one.
Okay, great. Again, on our healthcare theme, here Jenny is a emergency room physician. She is phenomenal. Again, ran for Congress in a different district and decided to run in this district, which is where she lives. She's running against David Schweiker, who has a ton of ethical issues right now, which we could get into for hours, but we'll take up the whole program, so we will not. She is doing an incredible job. This is a suburban seat just in the northern side of Phoenix. There are some rural components to this seat, but the suburban area in this part of Phoenix is growing very rapidly, much like a lot of the suburban areas that we're talking about. The Indianapolis seat that Christina Hale is running in. Gina Ortiz Jones is kind of suburban, San Antonio area of her district. I think we're going to talk about Jill Schupp in a minute as well, but the suburban revolt is very, very real. And we think that that is making Arizona as a whole more competitive. And certainly this district is ripe for the picking right now as well.
Let me bring up Jill too. We can talk about her while we're on the topic. Tell us about her.
All right. Jill Schupp is, she's in St. Louis. And I will do a shout out, even though I've been a lifelong Illinoisan, I am a St. Louis Cardinals fan. Because I was actually closer to St. Louis growing up than I was to Chicago. So I'm very excited about this one. She's served as a teacher, a businesswoman, state senator. Again, the healthcare theme, it's been a fight of hers to make sure that healthcare is more affordable in her public service. She's worked on that. She has had an unbelievable fundraising successful several months from April to June. Just get this, April to June, that short amount of time, running for Congress for the first time, she raised $800,000.
Wow.
She closed out the second quarter with more than $1.5 million in the bank. And, so that's what it's going to take to compete again in a race like that. She's running against Ann Wagner, who was elected the same year I was in 2012. And she, again, fits her district like a glove, and we feel really good about that race.
Let me move to Montana, the at-large seat there. So this is essentially a statewide campaign. Mm-hmm. Former state representative Kathleen Williams, and this is an open seat. She lost to the congressman who's now running for governor in 2018. So she's running for a second time as well.
She is. And she is also doing an incredible job. In terms of the at-large category, if you will, we are having very serious conversations about Montana at large, and I'll throw Alaska at large in there too. We have some very encouraging data in those two states right now, which obviously don't fit the suburban mold that we've been talking about and looking at in a lot of the districts that we're playing in. But we have incredibly encouraging data here. Kathleen did an amazing job in her 2018 race. She's put 75,000 miles on her car campaigning.
I guess so.
Huge advocate for the outdoors, the environment, obviously a huge deal in Montana. And she currently has over $1.2 million cash on hand, which will stretch very far in the state of Montana. Now an open seat. And she's doing an incredible job. We're excited about Montana.
And let's move to Nebraska. This is another rematch.
Mm-hmm. It is. So that's Cara Eastman, who you see on the screen there. And she is, again, taking on Don Bacon. So, so you kind of see that theme, right? You got healthcare as a theme. You've got these rematches that are the theme. So a little bit about Cara. She's a lifelong Midwesterner, and she grew up with a single mother. She has run high-powered nonprofits. She's led homelessness programs. She's run domestic violence shelters. She's helped people with Lou Gehrig's disease. She founded the Omaha Healthy Kids Alliance. So she's got this great, big, deep, and wide background in helping so many different people. So like the grassroots are really, that's her thing. She gets people so fired up. I know every time I talk with her, She talks about all of these phone calls that are being made, all of the prospective voters that she's connecting with. So she's got this, not only she's doing well on the fundraising front, but she's also doing great on the grassroots front as well.
I want to ask you, we have one more person we want to talk about, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. So if you haven't had a chance to go to the Ask the Question tab, please feel free to do that so we can take some of your questions. But I want to ask you about Hillary Shelton in Michigan. She doesn't know who she's running against yet because there is a primary for the Republican side on August 4th, but that's an open seat. Tell us a little bit more about her.
So Hillary she's great. She is an immigration attorney. Mm-hmm. She served in the Obama administration in the Obama Department of Justice. She is a native of West Michigan. Her family's lived there for years. And this is an interesting seat. So this is now the open Justin Amash seat. So early this cycle, we looked at this seat and we thought, this seems like a pretty Republican seat, but what are we doing about this seat? So now it's a mystery about whether or not Justin Amash is going to run as a third-party candidate. He has until early August to decide. And like you said, there is a Republican primary here that will be decided in early August. But, Biden is up 5 in this district, which is going to have a very good down ticket effect here. We have very encouraging data in this ticket with Justin Amash on the ballot and without him. So we feel really excited about Hillary, her deep roots in the community, and the amount of service that she's already shown to her country. So we think Hillary has a very good shot.
Great. I want to get to some questions since we've gone through and seen some of these terrific candidates that you all have. Here's a question from Nicole, and she says, what do you believe are the top issues preventing women from being reelected?
That would prevent women
from being reelected.
Look, I'm going to spin that around and make it a positive. I mean, I just think women are going to do great. I think women are going to show up in huge numbers to the polls.
Yeah.
I think they have had it with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I think Donald Trump he was one of the best recruiters for us. And he's one of the best motivators for us. And if you look at, when you break down the polling, look at suburban women and how they are just running as fast as they can away from Donald Trump and toward the Democrats running. And I think there's going to be like this, the women that we just went over, you had their images on your screen, you had a little bit of their bios, we went into a little bit of the politics there. These are relatable women. There's nothing stuffy about them. There's nothing, like if you went back to your days of like people you like and people you want to hang out with, these are women like you want to hang out with. And so I just think it's going to be, a plus. I cannot think that there is a negative of women running for these seats this cycle.
We've talked about this a little bit in some of our other events too, but that sort of authenticity factor that women are really starting to embrace in their own narratives now in campaigns we've seen over the last couple cycles. How important is that, you think, in elections these days?
Yeah.
The candidate matters.
Yeah.
Lucinda started saying that earlier. It matters a lot. When we talk about the science and the art,
right?
The science is: are you going to have the money? Are the polls, are the numbers going to? Can you move those your way? Is the Democratic performance index of these different districts, are they such that you can make progress? But the art of it is the candidate. And, I can go back to, I first started in politics at an elected level when I announced in 2006 that I was going to run for city council of East Moline, Illinois, population 21,000. My great big political base, by the way, I represented one ward, so it was 3,000 people I represented. But I then, fast forward to then announcing in 2011 that I was going to run for Congress. I remember how hard it was for me to talk about personal things.
Right.
You sit down with people who are going to do your television ads and your mail and all that. and they like keep drilling deeper and deeper and deeper. And, you know, as someone who was a reporter for 17 years of my career, I was always more comfortable asking the questions than answering them. But so you look at, here we are in 2020, and you've got to be willing to talk about your personal background and your personal struggles and, family situations. And I think I look at these candidates now, Lucinda, and you can weigh in on this, but they're, I feel like they're perfectly comfortable talking about their struggles, and they can just get to it like that. That took me years to have a little bit more of a comfort level, but they're real, and they're not afraid to share it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think that there are barriers to entry for women that we have to work very hard to overcome. And I think some women have for years felt a fear of stepping up and running for office. For how do I raise the money? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not good at public speaking. I have to fit this mold and be this sort of persona. And I think for the last 10 years, we've really seen women just throw that rule book out. And it's so important that women candidates, but women, share very personal stories about having student loan debt, about that time to visit Planned Parenthood, about the struggles growing up, and that, because that is what Americans face every day. And the more authentic our candidates are, the more they're going to connect, and the better service that they're going to provide to their constituents when they're elected. And I think it's just been remarkable to see women just continue to shed the persona they think they're supposed to be and just be themselves.
I wanted to ask you on the fundraising component, because you mentioned that there's been some criticism that there's too much of an emphasis on sort of the fundraising in the donor list. I was talking to Rhonda Fox, who ran in North Carolina in the primary, and she wrote a blog post for our Gender on the Ballot about her experience running. And one of the things that she said was that sort of this emphasis on fundraising and the size of a donor's list can disproportionately hurt younger and maybe more diverse candidates. What do you all say to that, to either young people who are running, someone that doesn't have an automatic donor list of people, and they might not get the endorsements and the support because they don't rank higher on the donor fundraising component?
I don't think anybody starts out being good at, or very few people do. I was terrible at it when I started. And by the end of my first election running for Congress, I had raised more money than any Democrat in the history of my district. I have a very, the district I represent is not affluent. But I mean, money, all it is that's what you need to be able to get your messaging out. None of us like it. If you're a Democrat, you support campaign finance reform. We had a great bill that addressed this. We passed it. And of course, it's sitting on the Senate side where Mitch McConnell, has it hidden in his desk. So another reason why I'll do a shout out to also taking back the Senate, so we can pass some of these things and send them over to Joe Biden to sign into law when he's president. But I don't think it's natural for us, but it's just something that you learn, and then you get better at it, and you have to work hard at it. I started a program, to Rhonda's point, and I know Rhonda, and I like Rhonda, and I respect Rhonda. Good person.
Right.
And I hope she sticks with politics. I think, she's a good person. I started a program several years ago in Illinois called Build the Bench, because of some of those reasons that Rhonda just mentioned. And it's a way, and I recruit into this program, a focus on women, young people, and people of color. That is the focus of who I bring into the Build the Bench program to teach those fundamentals of how to run and how to win. And we do a whole segment on fundraising, because it is, unfortunately, it is a necessary part of running and being successful in running for office. Right.
I'll put a plug in for us too, because we have a program called We Lead, where we do a similar thing for young women, helping them run for office. And again, we do spend a considerable amount of time on fundraising as well, because you have to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me go back to some questions here. This is a question from Ross, who asked, how do you feel the impact of having a woman on the ticket with Joe Biden will affect turnout among women?
Well, look, I'll start, Lucinda, and then you weigh in. Again, we're going to have great turnout because women are motivated, whether there's a woman on the ticket or not, to defeat Donald Trump. Yeah. And to make sure that we're holding on to this last firewall, the only firewall right now in Washington, D.C. is the House Democrats to hopefully, try to rein in some of President Trump's worst impulses, which is, obviously there are a lot of bad impulses coming out of that guy. But I think that whoever Vice President Biden picks as his running mate, he will pick somebody remarkable. I know almost all of the women he is vetting. I think there's only one on that list who I don't know, and he won't go wrong by picking any of the ones that he's vetting. They are remarkable, and I just think women are going to be motivated. Democrats are going to be motivated. People who want to get our country back on the right track again are motivated.
Congresswoman, I saw an op-ed the other day of someone who was floating your name as a potential running mate. I want to break any news here on our Women on Wednesdays?
Yeah, I am not on that list. I am focused on running CCCC and making sure that we hang on to and grow our majority in the House. That is my focus.
And you would be great, Congresswoman, but to be clear, I need you.
Okay, I'm glad we have that cleared up.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going.
Okay, let's see. We have another question. We talked a little bit about this earlier and sort of the impact of COVID-19. But Caitlin was mentioning the Christie Smith race. How else has COVID-19 impacted the election landscape, and how have you guys had to adjust to that?
Okay, I'm going to start again, Lucinda, and then I'm going to turn it over to you because you get the credit for this. Speaker Pelosi, I would say it was in March, maybe April, comes to me. And she says, these grassroots folks are just chomping at the bit to be able to do something. And here we are all in lockdown. We've got to get this figured out. So as any good chair would do, I turned to my executive director, Lucinda, and I said, let's figure this out. So we built from the ground up what we call the Virtual Action Center under Lucinda's leadership. Lucinda, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about what that is and why this has just been a remarkable way to adjust to this time in American history.
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched the Virtual Action Center a couple of months ago now, and it is a way for volunteers from home to get involved from the safety and comfort of your own couch. We can connect folks to virtual events to meet candidates and our members all over the country. You can register voters through our Virtual Action Center. You can phone bank, you can text bank. And we've actually had, we created a feature on it to encourage folks to sign up to volunteer in foreign languages for us. We have a lot of non-English speaking or non-native English speaking voters out there and constituents out there that we need to communicate with. We've had volunteers sign up in over 24 languages to be able to reach out on our battlefield, which is really exciting. Last month alone, we reached almost 800,000 voters through volunteering and through our Virtual Action Center. And we're really excited that we were able to get that up and running as quickly as we are in this new field environment. We are very hopeful that we are going to be able to move some of our field and volunteer capacity back to doors when it's safe, but we're not going to do that unless it's safe. So we are doing a few things in addition to and using our Virtual Action Center. Early in 2019, Chairwoman Bustos and the DCCC made the very smart decision to make investments on the ground in field capacity earlier than we ever had before at the DCCC. That is paying dividends now in this COVID environment where we have really deep roots and deep relationships that we've been working for a full 2-year cycle to form. When COVID hit, we launched the Virtual Action Center because we needed a place to send people to be able to get some of their grassroots activism frustration out, and we're happy to be that vehicle. A couple of the other things we did is we moved up additional field investments and added mobilization directors to a ton of our races across the battlefield. to really help make sure that we are being as smart as possible about each individual district and the digital outreach and volunteerism strategy that we're using in this new environment that we're living in. And just one other piece I would be remiss if I didn't mention when we talk about COVID and campaigning and our messaging that I know the chairwoman can talk about a ton as well, is people are afraid for their health. People are afraid for their family's health, for their safety. People are afraid. And in the middle of all of that, you have a Republican Party who is working to dismantle the ACA inside of a global pandemic. They are literally litigating this in court right now. And you have a Trump administration that refuses to open up the ACA marketplaces to make it easier for people who are losing their jobs as a result of COVID to sign up for health insurance. And so when we talk about healthcare and how it's tied to the economy and what is resonating and motivating women to run for office, motivating women to vote and voters across our battlefield, this puts a very fine point on the differences between what a congressional Republican and a congressional Democrat stand for. So we're going to continue to drive that home incredibly aggressively through the next few months.
Here's another question on political participation from Eli saying, given the current administration's very threatening way of dealing with people of color, and particularly ICE's aggressiveness with Latinos, it's been hard to get them involved in activating others, even in helping to register to vote. Any suggestions for us here in North Carolina?
I would start by visiting dccc.volunteer.org. Please visit our virtual action center. There are so many ways to get involved, and we are eager to not only get more people of color into volunteer to make sure we're reaching deep into the communities we're working very hard to represent and represent well. But we want to make sure that voters are reached out to and touched, and there is a culturally competent way to do that. Chairwoman, I'll pass it to you.
One other thing worth noting is we, along with our sister committee, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and state parties, have invested somewhere around $10 million. And we are filing lawsuits and are in the middle of litigation and have won lawsuits all over this country in probably almost half of our states now, where there have been voter suppression attempts. I mean, let me give you an example. We won a case in South Carolina where, think about like these voter registration drives. And I've been involved in these, and I've seen this where you go, say, to a grocery store, and there's somebody standing outside and says, "Hey, Lucinda, are you registered to vote?" And Lucinda says, "No, I'm not, but I'd like to be." "Well, let me register you right now." And in South Carolina, until we won the suit, that person then would say, "Well, Lucinda, I need your full Social Security number in order to register you." Okay, I mean, think about that. Mm-hmm. All that is a way for somebody to go, "I'm not going to give you my full Social Security number." So we filed a suit, won that. We have won suits in Michigan where there were attempts to tamp down voter participation among college students. I mean, this is like literally case after case after case where there have been these attempts to throw up barricades to people's voting rights. And we are unafraid to get involved. We are unafraid and more than willing to spend the money we need to make sure that we are opening up people's voting rights.
Great. We have time for one more question, but before we do that, I want to let everybody know about two of our upcoming events that we have over the next few weeks. Next Wednesday, we have Nikki Haley, who will be with us. She, of course, is the former governor of South Carolina and was the U.S. ambassador to the UN at the beginning of Trump's term. And so she'll be with us next week. And then on the 29th of July, we have Jen Palmieri, who, of course, was the communications director for President Obama, and then also was the communications director for Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, and also a proud AU alum. And she will be here on the 29th on our Women on Wednesdays. So please join us for that as well. But I think we have one or two more questions here. And so let me go to the questions and get the Congresswoman back up here too. So let's see. We have from let's see, Natalie. This is a great question. What are your thoughts on electoral quotas for women in office? So many countries with high percentages of women in national legislatures have quotas, like Rwanda, Bolivia, etc. Would that work here?
Wow. I don't see it working here, and I hope it happens naturally. Look, we have more women in Congress right now than who have ever served in Congress. Our hope is that that number continues to grow, and that it is the norm to see a woman in Congress, in the House, in the Senate, in governor's seats, and hopefully as president sometime in the near future. But Lucinda, I don't know if you have any other thoughts. The state of Iowa for quite a while has had quotas on like state boards, that sort of thing, which I'm intrigued by that idea, but I just don't know, like the electoral process. I don't know if I see that working in our country.
I mean, look, I think that I would love to have the House, the Senate, and the White House so we can debate things like that. So we win all three chambers. I think that would be a really difficult thing to get passed. But I think we have we're making strides, right? You have a Nevada legislature that has a majority women for the first time in history, and that's like, I think we have a long way to go. Women are still only a little more than 20% of Congress right now, the majority of whom are Democrats. But I think we have to keep fighting the fights that are ahead of us, and hope that we get to the point that we can have those arguments and those conversations.
Great. Well, that is a good place to end. I want to thank both of you so much for being here to give us an idea of the landscape and talk about some of these candidates that you all have. We'll definitely be watching, and I hope we can maybe gather some in October. I think that would be a fun program to have for folks. But we really appreciate all of your time, and we'll be watching the campaigns. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And hopefully we will see you next week. If you want to rewatch any of this, you can check out our channel on Crowdcast or go to our website, and there will be a recording there for you very shortly. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy.
Guys,
Betsy.
appreciate it.